So the name of the game in our industry is survival. If any one of you, he was an incredible gentleman, incredible dedication to his newfound country. Today, we don't perceive ourselves as being able to survive unless we are national in scope. There is absolutely no way we see that a regional brewery can cope with the competitive forces that the national breweries can bring to bear.
I voted against it, to do something wrong, I said, well, I got to find this.
Let me see if I understand. You figure 6% architectural fee.
I tell you, sometimes I'm questioning what.
Sparks Construction Company Incorporated out of Jasper, Alabama. Cersei
Not taken in this plan, taken consideration in this plan. I want to make it very clear that the needs of the patients and residents have been taken in close consideration in this plan. One of our
authorizes the Department of Mental Health to revise its planning for capital outlay at Hartlow State School.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I said, at the proper time, I'm going to move to table Committee Amendment number 2. At first, I would like to speak to the motion before I make it and tell people, having read the court order, the court represents House District 76. That's one thing. The other thing it does is into House District 76, and you see where you've got 8,308. We've made suggestions. We have, of course, not been as well.
It is, and I think this is an amendment that creates this 52% black Senate district in Montgomery County. Is not a race-neutral plan. It would not take into account the desire.
In the neighborhood of 45% black and 55% white. So if you pass this amendment and the Justice Department approves it and the courts approve it and you have
the temporary tax increase on the employee will stop that much sooner because the trust fund will have that much more money quicker.
I hadn't met him long, and I know him real good recently, and I think he's a fine person. I like him.
Mr. Speaker, rather than go into that, what we'd just like to do is table the amendment because
until January 1, 1984 to remove age restrictions for exemption from coverage for a full-time student participating in a work-study program, to exclude from coverage certain qualified real estate agents and direct sellers, to increase the taxable wage base to $8,000, and to provide for its retroactive effect to January 1, 1983 to clarify exemption, non-exemption of wages into or from a tax-deferred trust, to extend to 35 years the period during which certain monies credited to the fund may be used for.
Had received a telegram from Billy Graham, and it had stated that Coach Bryant and Billy Graham had some long heart-to-heart talks in the last.
I'm very pleased as representative, and I also the exhibit of that program and the pictures will be shown in Washington at the Washington Hilton during the first week in May. And it's not only a way to get yourself by picture to Washington if you can't go, but it's a good way.
By an invocation, and I'd like to call on Rhonda Lewis. Rhonda?
Please go ahead.
And keep from eroding.
Because the exhibit of that program and the pictures will be shown in Washington at the Washington Hilton.
On this day, when you have something as symbolic as a tree to represent Coach Bryant, it's just really tremendous, and it's just really a heartfelt thought involved in it, because 20, 25 years from now, when y'all are grown, y'all have children probably at this school right here, y'all can come back and look at this tree growing and say, you know, I was part of that.
like you did before the little door there.
retirement of one of the originals, Captain Don Terry from the Montgomery Police Department after 20 years. We're here. Just a lot of blessings. We'd love to see you, and we hope to see you tonight.
Mr. Speaker.
Clerk, start to read the bill. Bill to be entitled an act to amend sections 25.410, 25.416, 25.432, 25.451, 25.452.
At this time, to call, Mr. Speaker, vote me, aye.
Stay here and get this bill. We can go on to other things because a lot of people want to pass this tonight.
Saddle them with more expense of collecting money for a private organization, and it just simply is not right.
We want to vote aye. Vote aye. This is the table. Half of the school systems in this state already do this voluntarily, as far as the voluntary contributions are concerned. As far as the voluntary contributions are concerned, it would not cost the school boards. Some of them make $5,000 or $6,000 a year. This gives them a little additional time in order to get their money deducted and to have some IRA account in there.
Dues and voluntary contributions. So,
all right, now the motion, Senator Little.
On page 2 of the calendar, Senate Bill 29 by Mr. Hilliard to amend Section 32.5, 171, Code of Alabama, 1975 by inserting the words sections 30.
Do you have, is there a fiscal note, Senator Covington?
no, there's not.
Mr. President, of the black incumbents. So it's simply my opinion.
76. That's one thing. The other thing it does.
Next order of business, Mr. Secretary.
Motion, it's not in order, he lost it. We moved earlier in the day that when we adjourn, there's a simple way to do what he wants to do, and they're not really offering it.
The sections in the Alabama 1901 Constitution requiring that we not violate the county laws. So I don't see how anybody could think.
Time in the Atlantic each year, and the Soviets show considerable interest, making regular reconnaissance.
We must have been terribly precise. Yes, sir.
Apparently, one of the big problems for all our fleets today is the lack of numbers.
And especially our own. The naval forces, and also the only force directly under the operational command of SACLAM during peacetime. Simply because it is a mixed force. The third heading covers the exercises that enable us to train our forces, as well as to test and balance.
All right, he got the money. He's headed towards Ashley. He gave it to the guy with the long sleeve plaid shirt. All three black males are running east on that.
Oh, no, what this is? I can let him search me. He seen it when we went to late month. Lay still. Hotel.
102's got her. 102's got her?
Careful.
All right.
What you want done with this one? Want me ride in the headquarters to the youth aid?
Out a block half away.
On a gray and blue coat and a blue baseball cap. He's got the money. Go ahead and grab him, Don. He's headed up south. You got a staple kid back? Okay. Yeah, come on. Close to the sidewalk.
Oh, okay, right by the corner of the fence?
Yeah. You can lean up against that pole.
That's right on the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
And you slide right up beside that oak tree and you can see the fence, you can see everything going on.
Where did the guy go that was in the silver?
Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
The police have gone to this tremendous expense to...
Got a red sweater on and a white shirt also. He's walking on by. Call it, Kathy.
Got the money. Got the money.
All right, everybody stand by now. He's got it. Stand by a minute. type dress. She's got the money in her hand, but she has not taken it yet. It looks like she's going to put it back in her pocket. Come watch him just a minute. Let me look back up here where he fell. You need to Xerox it and give it back to us.
Okay.
He was laying on the pavement there where they were counting.
Yeah, that's where he fell.
For the higher law, you must have one present during interrogation.
Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
You walked on by.
Good evening, I'm Bob Howell, and this is the news for the 16th of February. There will be no suppers for members of the Alabama legislature, at least for now. The representatives and senators are ready to keep working straight through on several controversial issues, including a reapportionment plan for the State House and Senate, an education employee payroll deduction plan, and a state unemployment benefit program. Our men at the Capitol, Chris Grimshaw and Dennis Latham, are there for this live report. Chris, what's happening with the Senate?
Bob, the reapportionment issue has been the sticking point in the Senate, and the bill before the Senate is the so-called patch plan. That is the plan that only redraws those House and Senate districts in the black West Alabama area and leaves the rest of the state basically untouched. But the patch plan had a patch on it when it came out of a Senate committee last week. The patch would have created a possible black Senate district in western Montgomery, but Montgomery Senator Larry Dixon managed to swing support around and defeat that idea. It looked like the patch plan was on its way. But then the Proctor plan popped up. That's the plan offered by Senator Lister Hill Proctor. The Proctor plan is basically the black plaintiffs plan with some minor changes in the Selma area that create a possible black Senate seat over there. Suddenly support shifted again on a crucial 22-10 vote for the Proctor plan. That prompted the patch plan supporters to gear up for a possible filibuster. A decision by the patch plan supporters is being made now as to whether to fight that shift in support now or later. Arguments over the 1983 elections came from both sides. The Proctor plan supporters, though, are saying that they'll ask the state Democratic and Republican parties not to hold any party primaries if elections are required by the court this year. Instead, the Proctor plan supporters are saying that they'll ask the parties to simply hand-pick candidates, most likely the incumbents, to run again. But the patch plan supporters are saying that there are a number of incumbents that would be combined under the plaintiff or the Proctor plan, and that would mean that the parties would be hand-picking instead of the people, which incumbents would have a right to run again. All of this is up in limbo right now as to whether the patch plan or the plaintiff's plan will be coming out of the Senate. The hang-up in the House today has been one of the bills that has been supported by Governor James, or Governor Wallace, and has been in his call. And Dennis, it was expected to be a short fight in the House and didn't turn out that way.
That's right, Chris. The sponsor of the bill and the prime mover of the bill, Senator Representative Bob Albright of Huntsville, told me this afternoon that he expected the bill, both of them in the package, by the way, to be approved within a 15-minute time period. But it didn't turn out to be that way. It appeared that there was one attempt to amend the bill to lower the amount of the maximum weekly benefit from $120, as is in the proposed bill, to $110. That was defeated. The bill and its substitute, as it was substituted in the committee, was approved overwhelmingly. But about the time they got ready to vote on the bill, a member of the House from Birmingham moved to read the bill at length. Well, the bill was about 101 pages long, and that meant several hours of reading by the reading clerks of the House. They broke that up a few moments ago, gave final passage to the bill and the companion bill that would go along with the unemployment compensation benefit increase. And the forces that were trying to delay the bill or having it read at length actually weren't opposed to the unemployment compensation bill. It was a bill further down the House calendar that would be up for consideration later, and that was the voluntary checkoff bill of dues or voluntary contributions that's being supported by the AEA. They're still in session now. They're still working on the calendar. We'll let you know how that turns out at 10 o'clock. From the Capitol, Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Thanks so much, Dennis and Chris. Less than a month after...
go. Good job.
Got it. Keep going.
And accompanied by Avery and Gary Brown, Special Olympians from the Watauga County, Boone, North Carolina. The lighting of the Olympic flame, which shall burn throughout our games until their closing tomorrow evening.
Tomorrow night, a salute to the many volunteers that make Special Olympics so special. At the Southeastern Winter Regional Special Olympics in Boone, North Carolina, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
Resolution 75.
As a financial institutions.
Didn't you earlier?
Amendment, I think, that it satisfies most of those concerns.
Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the gentleman from Madison, Mr. Albright.
Mr. Speaker, the rustling must be disastrous in his county to have.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I move adoption of the amendment.
Question on adoption amendment.
Mr. Speaker,
Recognize Jim Dallas, Mr. Cosby.
would the gentleman explain the amendment?
Yeah, Mr. Casey and then Mr. Adams, that we consider changing that, and I didn't think that it posed any great problem. This deal.
Superintendents and folks at home, that the major problem with the bill was prohibitive cost and administrative nightmare. But they also.
Is it shall? In other sections of the code?
No, this just simply, in this instance, Representative Charles Adams, and did it pose any great problem? This deal substantially stiffens the penalties. And
Clerk, lock machine, record a vote. 84 ayes, no noes.
Vote in the aye, Mr. Speaker, please.
Mr. Reed, Jim Macon, votes aye.
Well, I move adoption of the amendment.
Question on adoption amendment.
Mr. Speaker,
Recognize Jim Dallas, Mr. Cosby.
would the gentleman explain the amendment?
Yeah, what the
radio at night.
How about calling a halt to your presence? Thank you.
The climatological data from Montgomery, Alabama, showing 2 degrees. The record low on this date was 13 degrees, set back in 1958. Okay. Hold it right there. We got it out at 9:24 which is good as old.
We got it on our radio at night.
How about calling a halt to your presence? Thank you. Thank you.
Sure, the climatological data from the state was 13 degrees, set back in 1958.
This year it's going to be several things. We're going to change an offense. We're going to get some guys out of some habits that they're used to doing and get them into a more diversified type offensive scheme. And that's going to be fun for us. I think it's going to be fun for the players. I know that a lot of our players are excited about the thought of throwing the football a little more and doing some different type things. And also our players are going through this off season. We've got a real good off-season program. Our weight coach, Al Miller, is doing a super job with our off-season program and conditioning program, and our players are going through it with a super attitude.
Well, we want to teach our base offense to the players that are at Alabama and to be able to get our best players in the game for this style of offense, which will be obviously different than the offense in the past. So that will be top priority, is to teach the base fundamentals of this offense and to get the correct people in the right positions so that we're playing the best people for this offense.
Some things will be different. They're going to have a lot of carryover from what they've been doing, even though it's been out of the wishbone, as far as the run game is concerned. The big thing, I think, is trying to teach the drop-back game. I think they'll adapt to that really quick. They're real fine athletes there. I'm excited about working with them, and the ones that I've talked to, they've been very receptive, and, there'll be some adjustments, as far as techniques, maybe some stances and things like that, but it's not going to be a big thing.
Meanwhile, across the hall, the Senate was locked in a filibuster over the question of redrawing House and Senate boundary lines, but the talk-a-thon was broken only minutes ago. To get the very latest on the status of the reapportionment legislation, Chris Grimshaw is at the Capitol for this live report. Chris?
Bob, the only break in the filibuster came about an hour or so ago when members decided to break long enough, and only for the reason of allowing the unemployment compensation bill and the payroll deduction bill to be received from the House to the Senate and then given some quick committee action. Both of the bills came out of committee rather quickly and favorably and will be up for a possible final vote as early as next Tuesday. With that action out of the way, the filibuster was renewed. The filibuster was a continuation of one that started last night when patch plan supporters started losing ground to supporters of the so-called compromise plan. The filibuster was designed to give patch plan backers time to try and convince House members not to give in to the compromise plan. Last week, the House had also passed the patch plan. But the erosion in support for the patch plan has reportedly flowed across the hall and has affected a number of House members. The patch plan supporters in the Senate finally decided that their filibuster was only serving to allow the compromise backers more time to gain support. So the filibuster broke about 30 minutes ago, and the bill is currently in the process of being passed and will be sent to the House, where the House will have to decide if it wants to agree. Now the patch plan supporters are hoping that they've given up the filibuster in time and early enough to beat the erosion of support and convince the House to reject that plan. Both the House and the Senate have taken an unusual mode of setting up their next meeting dates. The Senate will be coming back by itself tomorrow, and only for the purpose of allowing that unemployment compensation bill and the payroll deduction bill the scheduled time, the procedural amount of time that is required to put them up for final passage next week. Then both houses will return next Tuesday for what's expected to be another day of hot debate. Bob?
Thanks so much. Chris Grimshaw. We'll have more on that at 10. Tonight, Montgomery and Joe Reed.
Tonight, the Alabama House is still locked up in a reapportionment fight. The measure is in its final moments now before passage. And as Chris Grimshaw reports from the Capitol, it appears the plan backed by blacks and a white coalition will come out on top. Chris?
Gina, during the past several hours, there have been a lot of efforts to apparently postpone what appears to be the inevitable, and that is passage of a reapportionment plan. Throughout the past several weeks, the support has swayed between several plans, and tonight the majority support appears to be in favor of a plan that is backed by the blacks of Alabama, and it virtually redraws every House and Senate district in the state of Alabama, and more importantly, it increases the so-called safe black House seats from 17 to 19, and the safe black Senate seats from 3 to 5, with a possible 6th black Senate seat here in Montgomery. Senators and House members have consistently said that the support for the blacks plan is based on the threat of facing new elections in 1983 once a permanent plan is drawn up. The blacks have won broad support by promising to ask the courts not to call for elections in 1983 in exchange for passage of their bill. That bargain has prompted a number of senators and House members from the Black Belt, Birmingham, and Montgomery areas to accuse the rest of the members of selling out to a plan that they say, in fact, discriminates against whites in those areas. The senators opposed to the plaintiff's plan filibustered for nearly 2 days in an effort to stop the blacks' plan, but when that failed, they gave up. And when the bill came across to the House for the final passage, which would have been the actual end of the debate on the bill, a renewed effort was made to delay it, and that is what is going on now. Patience is what the supporters of the blacks plan are exercising in hopes that they can outweigh those who oppose the plan and have it passed in the next several minutes. Gina?
Well, Chris, what happens from this point?
Gina, we have to assume that the plan will be passed, and if it is, there are 2 steps that will have to be accomplished, and the first will be that they have a March 1st deadline, and between now and March 1st, the legislators have to take this plan to the U.S. Justice Department in Washington and ask them if it meets all of the guidelines for the 1965 Voting Rights Act. And once that is accomplished, assuming that happens, they take that approved plan to the federal courts and give it to them and ask the courts to review it. Then the court decides if it meets their standards, and if it does, it's implemented. Then they have to face the issue of whether or not to require everyone to run again in 1983 or come up with some interim plan that will take care of the Black Belt counties during the next 4 years and then wait and implement the permanent plan in 1986. A lot of avenues could take place in the next several weeks. Gina?
Thanks, Chris. That's Chris Grimshaw reporting live from the Capitol. Tonight.
will be used by the NAACP legal department to mount a legal to the theme, stand up and be counted. Each member bring 3, minimize or preclude blacks from being elected to public office. One of the most attractive features about the Alabama plan is that it splits so few county lines and increases the likelihood of additional black senators and representatives being elected. Moreover, it should make it much easier for county officials to administer elections because there will be very few counties under the committee's plan, which will be split between 2 or more House and Senate districts. Educational opportunity and social justice. Too many citizens, black and white, but especially blacks, take for granted the relative. Our campaign.
At the proper time, I'm going to move to table committee amendment number 2. At first,
have been made. Too many citizens, black and white, but especially black, participation, economic advancement. This new reapportionment plan is certainly a bold step in the right direction. And I have no doubt that should the court order elections under this plan in 1983 or 1986, Alabama will be referred to favorably in the years to come for having successfully and fairly reapportioned itself for the first time in its history. The legal campaign to move across the state of Georgia and the Southeast region to challenge at-large voting procedures. NAACP branches and past legislatures in other states during the last year or so. Indeed, one of the most attractive features about the Alabama plan is that it splits so few county lines and increases the likelihood of additional black senators and representatives being elected. By the NAACP legal department to mount a legal the act of voting on the act of political participation itself. We can no longer blame white America. We can no longer blame racism. We can only now look to our own initiative and our own effort to bring us out and set us in a position to really be have political influence as well as political representation. And I think that is something which is incumbent on the black community to become much more politically attuned, to register and to vote.
Do you think blacks will be more?
You give them a receipt for it. We can go back. I can try it forward. Hold on one second. before you do. Let me. More shot. I want to get Arizona. You seem to be on the direction. That's how it works. Big time.
That is him.
Headed up for sale a long time, but we didn't have enough bidders.
Books not only of these various packs, but are the individuals in this room today, if in fact we have to run again. I would implore that the courts have a little bit of humane
Committee amendment. Question on the committee
Amendment number one, Mr.
Amendment
Speaker.
number one. The clerk will unlock the machine. The members will vote. Members of the House, we have one of our former colleagues up here with us, Mr. Thomas Marr, who used to represent this, represent Mobile County in this body. It's good to have you here.
All opposed, no.
Subsequent to the election, the Alabama Democratic Conference, in itself, draws fairly some. However, it appears that many others.
Current legislative district would have 3.
Wish to honor Jim, and in fact honor ourselves, by presenting him with the Golden Hawk Award. The criteria for the Golden Hawk Award, he recognizes in a tangible expression